Welcome to the Driller Newscast. This is episode 152. I'm your host, Brock Yorty, and we're going to jump into an episode on geothermal, geo-exchange geothermal, and climate week across the country. Our feature this week will be with Paul Frith, Executive Director of the Ontario Geothermal Association, and his experiences with the Toronto Climate Week. It's the end of October, and in the past 2 months, we have seen a surge in dedicated climate action weeks right here in North America. At least 7 distinct climate weeks have just concluded, shifting the conversation from global goals to urgent regional and local solutions. If we start, the big dog for our climate weeks in the United States is New York City. The New York Climate Week. This is the largest and most significant event held in tandem with the 80th UN General Assembly. This summit brought global leaders from business and government and civil society together to tackle the big issues. The major topic this year, finance. And this is something we're seeing across the country as we have our big buffoon bill out there and the discussions on what does it mean now that we no longer have a 25D home energy tax credit, and what do the 48L have for us. So the finance discussion centered on funding the energy transition, scaling up, and what we're now calling blue finance. We're swapping this from debt for nature swaps. And this is what's happening. We have technology that is front and center as leaders debate the massive energy demands of AI in data centers, while also looking at how we drive agricultural innovation and everything that impacts it. I want you to think about this. Major industry and agriculture, they consume a lot of water. We also saw a major push to rebrand the voluntary carbon market as verified carbon market to emphasize the integrity alongside a new urgent focus on tackling super pollutants like methane. As we move to regional, the roundup was about how do we still meet our 2030 goals, and we head to 2050. And this is a big deal, everybody, because we had goals. And as we see political shifts, obviously these goals change, but this is a big piece right now as we don't consider what tomorrow will look like. We're just working as if everything is right now. So as we wrapped up the big conference in New York, we saw Toronto and Massachusetts and a conference at the University of Michigan and many others. So in Massachusetts, 2 events ran simultaneously, the Climate Change and Farming Week, focusing on agricultural revolutions like agroforestry, biochar, and addressing the climate grief that is impacting farmers. At the same time, a separate conference, Climate Preparedness Week, led by local libraries focused on community resilience and emergency readiness. Then our friend Paul Frith was in Toronto, where the city held its inaugural Climate Week. The theme was squarely on economic focus, on positioning Canada as a global hub for clean tech and innovation and investment. And we see this with our brethren north of the 48. Our Canadian friends have done a great job of advocating for geo-exchange geothermal and wastewater heat and all thermal energy resources we could get to. The academic world also, while all of this was going on, mobilized to the University of Michigan for a week centered on state and local action. Global Climate Change Week, now headquartered at Michigan's Grand Valley State University, worked to engage campuses worldwide. And the University of Pennsylvania held its own week on hotspots, tackling both literal impacts like extreme heat and figurative political flashpoints surrounding the climate conversation. From the financial markets of the New York to the farmlands of Massachusetts, the message this month in the past month of September was clear. Climate action is accelerating and it's moving into our backyards. It's here, everybody. July 29th, 2025, we hit a peak demand record of 759,000 kilowatts. In the day before, on the 28th of July, we had set the record the day before. So the two greatest peak demands we've had, which we know come from heating and cooling as a major energy suck, happened in 2 days in July. And as we look at the record through the United States, the past 4 years in July, all hot summer days in July have met us at our utmost peak demand. Now let's jump into our conversation with Paul Frith. For this week in the news, we're talking Climate Week, and I'm super excited because I get to have on a great industry advocate, a friend north of the 48, and someone who I butchered his last name. And as we joke about Canadian nice, he did not correct me. And so I want to reintroduce you all at the Driller universe here to Paul Frith.
Good job, buddy. Good job.
As we got on this call, and he's like, "Yeah, Brock Yoder or Yorgi or all of." No, he didn't do that. He's a much better man than me when it comes to getting back. So what's crazy is Paul just took time out of an insanely busy schedule because it is Thursday of Toronto Climate Week. Last week was New York Climate Week, Massachusetts Climate Week. The events are happening right now as we speak, and you will see this in a week as we put it out. But it's awesome to see a city like Toronto pushing this, the same as seeing a city like New York City and looking at Boston. But how the heck did you get involved?
Well, and as you know, some things have changed with me in terms of the OGA, even since we last spoke.
What's
And
changed?
so I was asked. I was basically voted in as president of the Ontario Geothermal Association in
Just
July of this
basically.
year. It's, I've been doing a lot of things for the OGA since I went on the board 3 years ago. As you know, I'm very, very passionate about geothermal. It has been a big part of my life for the last 14 years. I am incredibly proud of the work that I do. I'm incredibly proud of the work the industry does. And when I was asked, I said, I'm in. You know what? This is, if it allows me to do more to help the industry, I'm in. And I'm fortunate that I know a couple of people in the industry. I warned everybody. I'm gonna yell from the rooftops. I am not that guy that sits back. I am gonna be loud. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I'm gonna grow it, and that is, that's what
So
I'm
there's
trying to
no
do.
leash. You're just
Oh
out
no,
roaming wild.
no, there is a leash. I do. I have an amazing board of directors, and I don't do anything without talking to them. It's obviously we're very aligned. We're all talking from the same playbook. We all want to grow the industry, and whether that's around advocacy or whether that's around partnerships or whether that's around membership growth, whatever that happens to be, we are very aligned in what we're trying to achieve. And we've done some ads to our board that I'm incredibly proud of. We've really focused on diversification of the board, which I think is important in today's day and age. There's another announcement that'll be coming in the near future that I'm pretty excited about. We've added a member benefits program to our membership. Talking to everybody in the industry and just having a really good time. And it's just I'm loving it because I'm getting to talk to people that I haven't spoken to in such a long time. By the way, if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse today, I was talking literally all day yesterday. I spoke at the opening event for Toronto Climate Week, and I knew a few people there, and so my voice is a little bit shot today, but that happens to me quite frequently. So, in answer to your question, how did I get involved in Toronto Climate Week?
Oh, wait.
So,
I
uh,
want to reset. Let's everybody welcome President of the Ontario Geothermal Association to the newscast. And
okay,
in 14 years in the making and getting to work on boards and see advocacy and the ebbs and flows. And in the United States, we've had subsidies and then we've pulled back and we've watched a lot across the border and seeing how it can be done and how some things work and how some things don't. And we have amazing collaboration. And for Paul to be as humble as saying, now I'm president, he's doing great things with New York Geo and he's doing great things with ICSPA and he's doing great things with the Geothermal Drillers Association and then with other associations in geothermal across Canada because as we kind of get confused here in the United States, there's multiple provinces and they all operate with governments and it's just not one large state to be had as silly as that is to sound. There is a massive country with a great diverse culture, which Paul has just hit on. And now, let's face it, Toronto is, a big beacon star of Eastern Canada. And
that's
I've
right.
always
That's
loved
right.
traveling there, being a kid from Michigan. It's a clean city, it's a safe city, it's always pushing the limit. It's on the Great Lakes, like Michigan and like the Great Lakes states. We share a Great Lake compact. And so, Climate Week for Toronto is a big piece because we share a lot of border and we share a lot of uh, goals that need to be met on both sides in order for us to be good neighbors, but also good humanitarians to the environment. So, how did you get into Toronto Climate Week?
Okay, and by the way, first thing I will correct you on this one thing, Brock. It is not I, it is we. So as the OGA, we are a team, and I'm not going to take credit for all the work. You know what? I'm helping to form some direction, but I have an unbelievable team working with me. So if it was a one man show, it wouldn't be happening. So I've got to give a lot of props to all my board and my executive, everybody. They're all doing an unbelievable job. So I do have to give credit where credit's due. So Toronto Climate Week. Outside of my things that I do with geothermal, I am involved in another networking event in Toronto called Toronto Green Drinks, and it is a monthly networking event for the sustainability community. And in turn, a lot of people we'll call it from the space, come to that event. We average 200, 500 people a month. And so I was lucky enough to meet the president of Toronto Climate Week, Becky, probably about 4 or 5 months ago now. And at the same time, my co-chair with Toronto Green Drinks was her go-to person. So just things worked well. And I said, as the OGA, we can't not be here. So I talked to the team, the board, and said, guys, like, we got to do something here. And everybody was 100% on board. And so Becky and I started talking, kind of said, what do you want to do? How do you want to get geothermal involved? So there were a few things that we did. I connected them with some of the core geothermal installations in Toronto that are operational. Uh, One of those is the University of Toronto, which is one of the largest geothermal systems in Canada. The other one was Mattamy Homes, which is the largest home builder in North America, privately held. And so Mattamy is doing tours of one of their big buildings today, actually. And yesterday, U of T was doing tours of their big landmark facility. Um, in turn, I was asked to speak. They asked if I was able to. Oh, I also got them connected with Enwave to do tours of that, and then I was also asked to speak at the event. So I was on a energy and transportation panel yesterday. That was a lot of fun. Saw a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time at the event. I was able to connect with some elected officials that I haven't seen in a long time. So there's going to be a lot of follow-up work from yesterday's event. But at the end of the day, it was the first time Toronto's done it. I was even so pleasantly surprised, and I patted Becky on the back for this because the event was sold out. And for a first event to sell out, that is a very big deal. And there was a waiting list of something like 80 or 90 people. So Becky did one heck of a job, and just to be able to contribute to that, that made me really, really happy. But she did all the work on this thing.
So, speaking of all the work and the team behind you and the collaborations happening, where did geothermal, ground source heat pump geothermal, fall into Climate Week? Because let's face it, we do have an identity crisis. And apparently, people like breezes and they like sunshine and they like energy production, but they
Yep.
forget about that really resilient temperature that's in the ground, regardless if
Yes.
it's Celsius or freedom units. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it was about exposure, and for people, like, they hear about it all the time, and whether that's through us or the real estate community, whoever's working with it, they hear about it. It's become, it's not, I wouldn't say it's mainstream, but it's becoming more mainstream. Even if you look at things from a market perspective, in Ontario and Toronto, we have 30% market share of the multi-res industry, which that's most people were shocked about that. The numbers have gone up dramatically over the last several years. I think when I came in, we were at something like 2% or something like that. So I think we're around 30 in that space. So it's not like people don't know about us, but to have the ability to be able to go and look at actually installations, and if you look at the U of T site, you can go and look at the mechanical room and see how everything's tied in. And it was guided tours so people could talk about it. But then to be able to be on that panel that I was on, and talk about some of the different things that we're looking at, talking about advocacy work that we're doing, and talking about growth in the industry and the importance of it, and whether that's around decarbonization or electrification. It was really nice to be able to get that messaging out, and to be able to talk one-on-one with a lot of the attendees. It was fantastic. And any exposure I can get and we can get as an industry, I'm happy to do. And that was an important one. But any event that I can get to where I can, preach the message, I'm going to do it.
So that's amazing. What did they talk about? 2030 or 2050 goals?
No, because keep in mind, at the event, you had a lot of technologies represented, a lot of very senior level people, right? Like the mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, opened the event. The former mayor of Toronto, David Miller, closed it. And you had different technology people. You had clean tech people talking. You had a little bit of everything. Trust me, I wish it could have been a geothermal rah rah rah, but we were one small piece of the pie. But obviously, everybody in that room are all part of the same family, and that is about doing the right thing, understanding what climate change is. You didn't have any haters in that room. It was people. It was a group of people that really get it, and want to make a difference, and want to help. So it was great to be able to collaborate with others in the industry. And I openly said, even when I was on stage, there's room for everybody. You know what? Uh, it isn't just Geo. We are obviously one of, if not the best technology when it comes to carbon reduction, but we're not the only thing out there. And there are situations where it doesn't make sense for geothermal. That is reality. And there is space for everybody. And if all the different technologies out there can learn to work together, we're going to be so much more successful as a human race.
It's wild. You're right. There's a holistic approach for us to
Yep.
get to it, and it's not. We talk a lot about greenhouse gases and net zero and decarbonization, but it's about stability, equitable heating and cooling costs,
Mhm.
and yeah, let's face it, last year in 2024, one of the hottest summers on record. New Jersey had fires, and the Southeast had fires, and the Western United States had fires, and the California fires were, you know, horrific. And yet, in the several years, the same with last year, Canada, from one province to another, saw significant fires that we all have to say were impacted by drought conditions
Yep.
and us not having the capabilities of what our ecosystem once was. So we do need to recognize the impacts that climate change is having.
I agree wholeheartedly. And when I talk to people and they say, "Well, I'm just one person. What can I do?" And the reality is, if every one person's what they do combined, that's how you address the problem. There is not one magic bullet where all of a sudden the problem's solved. It's not how it works. It's what do you do as a human being, but then what do we do as a province, as a city, as a country? What do you do to shift policy to address the problem while at the same time understanding that to make massive change, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of work that has to be done, but every little bit gets you to that larger end goal. And that's the way I look at it, right? In Ontario, we're fortunate that even our electricity system, we got rid of coal several years ago. So there is still some natural gas in it in terms of the peak plants, but for the most part, we're nuclear. So we're cleaner than most in terms of our grid, but in terms of our buildings, there's still challenges there, right? So this is a big problem. Obviously, it is incredibly political, and the politics and administrations and policies impact how we're going to do things as a country, and it shifts whatever it is every 4 years, right? It's reality.
So I want to throw a curveball in here.
Uh-oh.
It is very easy for us to see the upside in densely populated areas, areas that we have strong infrastructure, that we're suddenly not so worried if we have a massive weather event, especially when we think about it, a snowstorm, a winter storm that's going to knock out power, that we're going to be able to have the infrastructure in place to keep everybody warm. How do we make that argument in the rural areas as where we have the holdouts, as we talk about having everyone, and then you suddenly start thinking, um, this community's only capability is, that coal fired power plant, or um, everybody is on remote propane, those type of things. How do we make that transition?
Well, you're having that conversation around resiliency, right? And then you're talking about health of the grid and the what ifs. There are certain things that can't be avoided. Okay, let's talk about reality. Okay, at the end of the day, if you have a ground source heat pump, you're relying on electricity to drive that heat pump, right? And it's no everybody is not going to have a redundant system in their house. It makes no sense. So now you're getting into the conversation around potentially storage. You are potentially solar. There's, how do you address it? You're going to get into a lot of opinions. You're going to get into costs on that. I've been impacted by it up at our cottage. There was a major event that took place. Now, fortunately, it was in the off season, but we were down for 7 weeks without power. Um, so you got to do what you got to do when stuff happens. There are events. What year was it that the whole grid went down? You were probably impacted by that. What was it? Was that 03, I think? Where
2003, which
yeah,
it
you
was
remember? Yeah, the grid went down for 2 days. Like the whole province and like on 3 states.
in the eastern United States in New York
Yeah.
City. And
Oh
yes, that
yeah.
was a
And
big deal.
yeah, like stuff like that is outside of your control. Natural
I think it was
disasters
a
on
server update.
yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
it was something. It
they
was a software thing. Mind you, in '03, that would have been like DOS.
Yeah, it was. I think it was actually somebody flipped the wrong switch. One network went down, and then it was just snowball effect, and everything just crashed. And it took them forever. But in Toronto, there were people that were driving home that needed gas. Well, obviously the gas stations were all everything was dead, so there were just cars sitting everywhere, and it was a train wreck, and nobody knew what was going on because all you had were you had a wind up radio because you could find out what was going on, or you were able to turn on your car. That's the only way you knew what was happening.
And at this point
So
today, if you didn't like, let's just play the game for a second. 20 years later, 22 years later,
mhm.
news is received to people through 5G and internet and phone, and uh, you can't live stream a global blackout because there's no connection. So
Exactly.
as we joke about, not joke, as we talk about resiliency and having a backup and stuff for your cottage or for a rural area,
Yeah.
we don't have the resiliency to a data communications.
Yeah, there's reality, right? It is stuff happens. And, can you have a generator to save you for X amount of time? Yeah, but to have something that's going to back up your whole house, you're getting into astronomical costs. So at the end of the day, you do what you got to do, right? That I think that's the best answer. And I think the answer to that question is going to be different for every person. If you're looking at things like apartment buildings or condos that are tall, that's a different conversation because you're dealing with safety. Somebody that's on the 30th, 40th, 50th floor of a building, you've got to have a way to get them out of that building. So now you're talking about significant backup, and there's different solutions around generators and cleaner backup power. The conversation around storage, that is still happening. I have clients in my business that work in that world, so I have a very, very good baseline understanding of that. So there are solutions, but it does come down to affordability. And for the person that owns a house, no matter where you are, it's a matter of what you can fit within your budget, what makes sense. And if you can't, make sure you have a plan, right?
And I think that's a beautiful point. It's something that we as an industry, we as drillers here in the States or in Canada or around the world, as we look at the infrastructure for geothermal, it's a holistic approach. And
Yep.
yes, there's a place for wind. There's a place for solar. There's a place for
Yes.
batteries. It's being prepared and being backed up. No different than when we pull in on that job site and we have a drag bit, a tricone bit, and a PDC bit because dang it, sometimes that overburden goes deeper than we thought, or we hit some hard rock that where we live, 15,000, 14,000 years ago, giant chunks of ice came through and
Yep.
deposited boulders where there's not supposed to be boulders. So,
Hey, I've heard so many, and as you know, I worked for a large driller for a number of years. So, we saw everything from 400-foot overburden to there was one site we were working on where they were drilling down and they hit a truck that was buried, I guess, landfill. And so you just never know. And they're hitting this thing and they couldn't figure out it was literally a pickup truck from the 1920s or 30s. Or in Ontario, you've got the Canadian Shield here, right? So in Toronto proper, you're basically dealing with shale and limestone. But once you go a little bit north of Parry Sound, you're going into the Shield and you're getting into granite. And same thing in Ottawa, there's a split in there. And I am not a geologist, but I learned from one of the best geologists in the country. So I actually know what I'm talking about every once in a while. So yeah, you'll deal with a lot of different things. I have this conversation all the time with people because people they don't understand the cost mechanisms with drilling, and people think that if you don't understand geo, they think that rock is bad, and it's like no, rock is your friend. You want rock, that is good. So and I always joke because in Toronto, and I learned this from Stan Reitzma, who I worked for a number of years. If you're in Toronto and you're down by the lake, you're 30 feet to rock, optimal drilling conditions. But if you do drive 2 kilometers away, there's a place called Casaloma, which is it's a venue, it's a castle type thing. If you're up there, you've got 400 feet of overburden 2 kilometers away. That is geology 101 for you. You don't know what you don't know. We are fortunate that there is a lot of geothermal in Ontario and there was a lot of data. So we have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but there are scenarios where you don't. And that's why when the different players are working on projects, it's always recommended that you do a test hole. You know what you want to know what you're dealing with if you can, but there are times where you can get away with it because there's so much geo there, right?
that is such a great point. And yeah, we have geology 101 and then we have glacial geology. And if there is a big body of water that we call a Great Lake, that overburden had to be pushed somewhere. So,
Yep.
it makes sense.
100%. Oh, it's a very complicated thing, right? Once you get into things like aquifers as well, now you're going to a different level. And when you go out into British Columbia, as an example, you're dealing with things like glacial flow, and that is stuff that's way outside of my area of expertise. But again, the biggest challenge to our industry is geology and the ability to do what you do. And I haven't even touched on shale gas and stuff like that, right? So It's not like the geothermal drillers are just popping holes into the ground and everything's fine and dandy. It's unfortunately way more complicated than that.
What's so insightful about what you've just said is, as being president of the Ontario Geothermal Association, and I'm co-founder of the Geothermal Drillers Association, and we have all of these great associations, and we're always trying to get more of the civil construction side, i.e., drillers, the laterals, the tie-ins. Um, we have a lot of those individuals that listen to the newscast or watch the newscast, and they're the experts of their area. And
Mhm.
as we're looking at cost savings and projects, yes, we seem to talk a lot about big multi-million dollar projects, but there's lots of projects that are, the dentist office or our accountant or the convenience store, or many of great projects to have great, revenue and profit
Yep.
and have long lasting customers that don't have to be the 500 or 1,000 hole deal. And so
Yep.
we need more driller members. We need more dirt moving members in all of these associations because we got a lot of work to do and we're all better together.
You're right, and I'll say this: if I do my job, and from an advocacy perspective, we grow things, and whether that's through policy shifts, incentives, what have you, we always want to see our industry grow. We don't have a problem right now from a capacity standpoint. I hope we never have a problem with capacity, but when you're talking to government about things like incentive, they always ask the question, are you ready? What happens, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm a firm believer in growth. I think as an industry, I think we at some point should collaborate and have some messaging that we put out as an industry to the youth, talking about geothermal, why it's important. And I think it should be very targeted. And I think that would involve organizations like Geo Exchange and Ryan and IXPA and some of the other larger groups, and like
Geothermal
really
Drillers
target,
Association.
and the Geothermal Drillers Association. I'm trying not to self-promote here. But I think to do some sort of a campaign at some point to really kind of talk about, and I think you would target students, right? Hey, you know what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, if we all do our jobs, and we all know that geothermal is going to grow, so what are we going to need? We're going to need drillers, we're going to need mechanical engineers, we're going to need mechanical contractors, we're going to need all of these specialized skills. And I'm hoping at some point we'll see even more drilling courses in Ontario and Canada. There aren't a lot of them right now, but I think at some point we will need that. I'm not saying today, I'm not saying we have a problem right now. For anybody that's listening, please don't think that I'm suggesting we have
Well,
any type of a problem. We don't.
what's wild as getting to work on projects around the world, you meet individuals that when you hear their education or credentials, and in the oil and gas or even the minerals exploration market, Canadian drillers
Mhm.
kick butt, are, there's going to be some solutions, and I run into them in the Atacama Desert and in
Yeah.
Africa. And so I've met and great innovators. And then like the Navy, the United States Navy Seabees are
Mhm.
really awesome. And the Royal Engineers in the UK are just
Yep.
phenomenal at things. And why I'm getting here is Fleming College, Sir Sanford Fleming
Yes.
College in
Yes.
Ontario, with all of the great knowledge shares and the infrastructure they've put into there. I have met up with individuals on geothermal projects across North America and then into the Netherlands and Luxembourg and Belgium that are Fleming students
So yeah,
that
Fleming is the one that I was just referencing. Fleming is in Lindsay, Ontario, and if he's listening, I will give a shout out to Andy Gordon, because Andy is one of the main guys with that program. I think he got a new title. I can't remember what it is, but I was lucky enough to get to know Andy because he worked with GeoSource when I was there for a short time, and he's really good at what he does. And then he went to Fleming overseeing the drilling program. So no, it's
And
a
there's
very
Jim
important.
Smith, yeah, over there.
Yeah, I haven't met Jim, but I've known Andy for a long, long
Jim's been
time.
there a long time. So
Yeah, I have
yeah.
a lot of respect for what they're doing. I think as an industry, we need more of those to make something like that happen. It's not easy, but you always have those conversations whenever you're talking to post-secondary education institutions. I've talked to some of them just to find out what the interest level is, so when the time comes, you're able to engage and they're not caught off guard. But I honestly believe the messaging to the youth, it needs to happen. Like we all do it, but I think a combined message would be a good idea at some point. Like I'm a firm believer, and I say it all the time. The youth are our future, and I invest time because if you don't, you're not doing your job. I mentor in a few different programs with different post-secondary educations because we're only going to be here for so long. And yeah, sure, we can set things up for success, but you've got to engage the youth because they are our future, and you need them on board.
So we teach them well, and then they'll lead the way, right? Is that how that goes? No.
You tell it well. You can only teach
Here,
them so much, right?
here's the deal. You're absolutely right, and we're supposed to be the middle-aged guys of our industry, not the old guys. But
I
when we
know.
look at like the age gap, um, we need we need as many young professionals coming in and new professionals that are
Yep.
transitioning from other industries and whatnot. Like any age, we want the capacity, but I'm gonna open the platform up for you here, Paul. Like from a board member and getting involved in geothermal associations like the Ontario Geothermal Association and being part of the advocacy so that both of us, have, a couple decades working in the industry and on and off volunteering or being voluntold to be on a board or
Yep. Yep.
on a committee or something. How do we incite not only professionals that want to go and do education and become owners and operators and all this piece, but how do we get them beyond the platform of the drill rig to
Mhm.
being on Zoom calls and being in meetings and understanding the importance of taking a day and being at Toronto Climate Week or being at the Ontario Geothermal Association conference every year and having that camaraderie.
Well, I think you have to address the youth. Now, if you're talking about industry guys and getting industry guys to hop off a rig and come and participate, that's a little more challenging, right? Because in that situation, normally you've got the blue collar versus white collar. Is a driller. I would love to have that happen. I actually had a reporter come up to me. I was talking to him for a little while yesterday, and he said his dream story is to talk to one of the geothermal drillers that came from the oil world and the transition to that. He's like, that's an awesome story. So I said, I can probably help you out with that one, bud. Um, from our perspective, one of the first things that I wanted to do and we want to do as a board is have committees because it's important. Like it's always kind of been the board kind of does their thing and we drive everything. I want more member engagement. So we are starting to form committees. So a committee for social media, we're already doing that. We're probably going to be starting one for advocacy/government relations. Right, we're not going to start a technical one right now, just because the new version of 448 just came out, and that just finished up. But I think at some point we will do a technical committee, and for people that want to get involved, there's going to be those opportunities if you're a member, and I think maybe we'll do something for students. Um, but you have to be motivated to want to do this kind of stuff. I can only say so much to you to make you want to do it, but if you're not motivated, and part of the messaging that I give to people, and I do a lot of networking, I'm sure you've figured that out about me. I talk to people about getting involved, to putting your time in. The first thing I say to a student, and the number one advice, well, there's two pieces of advice I give them. The first thing I say is, just because you have a great education, that's the book smarts. You got to get the street smarts, right? I'm a prime example of that. Okay, I'm a lowly college graduate with a diploma in recreation management and leisure studies, but I have my
Wait, time
CFP.
out. What, you have a master's degree in
No, no, I
recreation
do not have a
entertainment
master's degree. I do not have a master's degree.
a
I have a
doctorate.
diploma.
I know you. I've seen you out in the public, and you obviously know how to get recreation management for the entire group of having fun.
I no,
Postdoctoral.
I went to no, no, there is no doctoral.
I'm just
I'm one of
picking
those
on.
people that did not exactly. I know. I'm one of those people. I didn't love school. I'm the first one to acknowledge it, but I recognize the importance of having a post-secondary education. So I got that uh, when I was going to school. My goal was to go to work for a municipal recreation department. That is what I wanted to do. And coming out of school, and this is a common story, there were no jobs in the space, and I ended up getting a job in my hometown, which is Sudbury, Ontario, with a business publication. And that's where I started my illustrious sales career. And that's where I started to learn how to talk to people. And I recognized very early on the importance of networking, having a network, the way you should treat people. And all of that has followed me all the way to where I am today. And the basic principles of who I am are still the same, right? I treat people the way I want to be treated, period. I show everybody respect. I want to know as many people as I can because the more people you know, the more successful you're going to be. And I say this to students, right? At the end of the day, it's great that you have a piece of paper, but if you are not out there and you don't have a brand and people don't know who you are, you're nothing more than a piece of paper. So the importance of networking, getting out there and getting involved is really, really important. And I would say that to anybody. And even with the event I referenced earlier, I've got geothermal people that are coming out to that now. And, they're people some of them people I've talked to forever that just all of a sudden they're starting to come. Our friends, GeoX out of Calgary, they actually flew in for this one. And I love to see that. And I say it to everybody, right? There's so many events out there. Get involved, get known, start to participate with us. We'll figure out a way to get you involved. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at this event yesterday and I felt bad because there's a guy I know really, really well. And I have done a really, really bad job of getting back to him. I openly acknowledge that. And so he came up to me. He's like, Paul, how do I get some of your time? I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I'm so sorry. He's like, Paul, I want to figure out how to get involved with the OGA. I want to volunteer to help with your conference. And I'm like, oh, you're making me feel worse now, man. So I'm going to make time for him. But there's always people that want to get involved and there's always opportunities. So, you just got to make sure that you point people in the right direction and you create the opportunities for them and help them figure it out if you're talking to the youth or people that aren't involved and want to get involved. I know I
And
rambled.
this,
Sorry.
no, no, not at all. It's perfect, and we're gonna start to wrap up.
Okay.
Um, I picked on you about what you were talking about with post secondary education, but the
Yeah.
reality is networking is one piece, getting involved is one piece, but and Chelsea Yorty, the publisher of the Driller, my best friend, my wife, is brilliant at this as well. The art of gathering. And so, it's one thing getting networking. And the downside of the art of gathering is the same. And I get pulled into this with all the hats that I wear, and you wear many hats. We get
Mhm.
busy, and you look at emails come through, and you look at phone calls, and you look at texts, and you try to arrange. And I think the crazy thing, I learned this a few years ago about if you're lying, you're about to fall asleep, and you suddenly have a moment where you're like, I didn't follow
Yeah.
up on this and I didn't do
Yeah.
this. The reality is the human mind can only balance about 10 objectives at a time. And our subconscious lets us know as we're at that
Mhm.
almost relaxed space that, hey, we're going to lump in three more that you're supposed to also be working on and get you to like claw your way back
Yeah.
out of the downtime.
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much you can do as a human being. And even people say to me often, like, Paul, how are you still alive? Because, I'm putting in 12, 14, 16-hour days regularly. And then people will say, hey, well, what can I do to help? And I always give the same answer: create a 36-hour workday. If somebody can do that, it'll be great. No one's been able to figure it out yet. and even while I'm sitting here doing this podcast, right, I've missed 6 phone calls, and I think there's been about 12 text messages. So that is my life. That is my world. You know what? There is a downside to having a big network. Is you got to try and keep up with that network, and it can get very, very overwhelming at times. So I personally, and I say this, all you can do is your best, right? You can't do any better than your best. And so it's becoming more and more common when I respond to an email. I'm so sorry for the delay. Things are nuts. But don't bullshit people, right? It's just tell people, be honest, right? Hey, things are nuts. I'm sorry. And just be honest. Don't lie or whatever. Just, be honest. People get it. And we're all busy. That's the world we live in, right?
And we're busy, and you took time out of all the crazy things that are going on, and you caught us up on the great things happening in Toronto and in Canada and in the industry as a whole. But you also found time to drop, we need to get to the youth. We need to start inspiring. We need more drilling schools. We need better collaboration amongst associations. And we're all just human. And so I appreciate you. You did a hell of a job balancing all of this unscripted,
Ah,
unprovoked.
I'll always make time for you, buddy. And I really enjoy working with you, Brock. I love what the driller does. I love what the GDA does. I'm hoping we can do this regularly. If you want to do something again, because we didn't dive into the deep meat and potatoes of what's happening in Ontario from an advocacy work and some of the things that could be coming. And there are some joint initiatives that we are working with our American friends on. And I think the next time we're able to do this, I might be able to share some of the details of the things that we're working on. And it's really, really exciting stuff for the industry. Like I said, I want to do my part. I want to make a difference here. And I'm hoping to be able to make sure people are as excited as I am about what's happening. It's just, as you know, sometimes you can't share the stuff you want to share because there's sensitive information.
Sure. And, there's another platform that we have here at the Driller called The Bad Podcast, which is
Okay.
Brock and Dave's Drillercast podcast from a few years ago that has just dropped and is live. And it's long form podcast only. And we have no schedule. And if you think we jumped around here, you can come on and we can talk about anything. And you get Dave Bauer's perspective on being a international operators union, the one of the top trainers for apprenticeship for drilling, and his collaboration with the international in Toronto. And we have plenty we can talk about there. And yes, I'd love to have you on again.
I love doing this, and you tell me when you want to do it. And next time I'll be less tired. It was a very long day, and I
You
had
look
to go
great,
home
man.
late last night. And no, Brock, I always got time for you, buddy. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what the GEA does. You know what? It's awesome, and I'm really, really very fortunate to be able to call you my friend, man. That does mean a lot to me.
That's the most important part of this industry. As long as we get to work with friends and we get to advocate for a
100%.
better planet and for a more resilient energy source and heating and cooling source, it's a
Yep,
pretty cool
100%,
thing
buddy.
to be tired about.
100%. It's work with people that you like, have some fun, make some money, do what you got to do, and just enjoy what you do. That's the most important thing, right?
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for joining us for the Driller Newscast. Paul, your insight and collaboration with the industry is just so welcome. The same as our champions in New York at New York Geo and our champions in Massachusetts with Heat, Zaina McGavi and her team. So many great people up there that I enjoy working with, to Illinois Geothermal Alliance, to all the great things Bryce is doing in Colorado, along with the regulators, Kevin in Colorado, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jenny, you are kicking butt at helping us find the solutions from a regulator standpoint and collaboration. And I want everybody to think about this right now. As we're ramping up, is not the time for buffoon consultants and engineering companies to come up with a bottlenecking process that does not allow us to hit our 2050 goals. We need all drilling technology. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, do some research. But 1,600-foot holes, sure, work some places. Sure, is going to have some risk. But let's not start layering on risk to traditional analog rotary holes. We need all drilling technology and we need all capabilities, but we can't say this technology is the best and everybody else should invest in it to do it. It's just not the way we're going to get there. We need good, holistic approaches. Go to thedriller.com, check out the great content coming out by Johnny. Check out the Brock and Dave podcast, the Drillercast, that's happening bi-weekly. And I'm headed to Reno. I'll be posting some video and LinkedIn's while I'm there. This episode will drop, and then we'll recap. It's almost daylight savings. Wow.